Okay, this is Priyam Harsh, currently pursuing BC second year. Oh, that's great. Lovely. Great to have you here. So, guys, we'll be starting soon. Be here with us. This is going to be a really, really great webinar. And we have the speaker with us. How are you, Banti Kumar?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be starting soon. Just waiting for a couple more minutes to other mentees to join.
Sure.
Yeah. The mentees, yeah, those who have joined yet, they seem really excited for this webinar.
Awesome.
Also, guys, I'd like to remind you, a gentle reminder, that throughout the session, whenever you have a doubt or anything, please do drop a question in the question and answer box and not in the chat box so that we don't miss any of your questions. Please keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to start in a minute, just a minute, and then we'll go. Bunty, if you could only join with your video on.
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, can you see
Hello.
me?
Yeah, we can.
Hi.
Hello. So it's 8:05 and we'll begin. Let the mentees come join us and we'll start with this. So to begin with, I'm Sheetal from My Captain, and let us start with this great webinar we have. And I want to thank you, Bunty, to come here with us to join us, and you're ready to give us a lot of information in the field we're interested in. So also I'm thankful to My Captain to organize this in collaboration with QFUS. QFUS is helping us a lot by giving us great mentors like you, and we are really excited. I can see people joining, and I will not take one more minute of your patience and keep you more waiting. So let's begin with the webinar. So to start with, can you please introduce yourself, Bunty? Let us know about your education background, what you've worked on, and what are you currently doing?
Sure. So, hey everyone, my name is Bunty Kumar, and I am a software developer right now working at Flipkart. So I graduated. I have a bachelor's in engineering degree in computer science and engineering from Pune University, and I graduated at 2016. And since then, I'm working as an Android developer. Previously at Pune, and from last year, I joined Flipkart. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, and currently you're working on?
So at Flipkart, I am currently working on the e-commerce Android app that we have that everyone uses for e-shopping. I am one of the Android developers of that app. And right now we have just launched Flipkart Quick, where you can get your essentials and everything in under 90 minutes. So we just launched that. I was part of that team, and that is going on for quite some time. And now I'm looking into other things.
Oh, great. Lovely. That's lovely. So moving on, you're currently working as a software engineer at Flipkart. Can you tell us the work experience and work culture at Flipkart?
Working at Flipkart is really great. You get to solve a lot of interesting problems that we have, and it's not just about solving problems. You have to solve it at a scale that Flipkart operates. It's like you're not doing something for 1,000 or 2,000 at 10,000 people. You are dealing with a million of users, and at sales it becomes 10 million sometimes. So you have to keep that in mind, and so whatever you are doing, you have to deliver it in the topmost quality. So that drives you like to be better. And also the peers that you have, everyone here is a brilliant software developer, like the expert of their fields. So you get to work with a lot of uh, experienced and intelligent people. So that is one of the things. Other than that, the things that you're doing, millions of users are like getting to use that. That is an excellent feeling for a software developer, that the work that you're doing is being used by so many people. And especially in these times, right? For example, the Flipkart Quick that we delivered, it was the need of the hour. Like people are not like they are not allowed to go out, so we really needed something which caters to our day-to-day need in such a quick fashion. Like the standard delivery of 1 hour or 2 or 1 day or 2 days, it's fine for like normal days. But if you need something quickly, that was the need. And if you get to work on something like that, and so it's a great feeling. It's a great thing to have, and that's all a software developers need actually. So, and as a company, it is awesome. We really have a lot of independence on the things that we want to deliver. We don't have restrictions as such that on the way. So we have the engineers have the command on how the things are going to get delivered, as long as they are of the quality that the company needs. So that is not something that you get in a lot of companies that we get in Flipkart. So that's amazing.
Yeah, indeed, it's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
So moving on, can you tell us the roles and responsibilities of a software engineer?
See, the primary job of a software engineer is to solve problems using software. That's the crux of it. So for example, what happens is there is a problem statement, right? It could be anything. It could be as simple as like, give me something which helps me maintain my monthly spendings, right? It could be as simple as that, or it could be as complex as build me an app which will like sync up all my contacts in cloud in all devices. So the complexity varies. So you get a problem statement, and your job as a software engineer is to break that problem statement into software terminology, break them into a task, and then like problem solve it, brainstorm it, research whatever you need to do to implement that particular task, come up with a scalable and with a scalable solution that can be implemented, and then convert that idea into a software which the end user or anyone can use. That's the crux of what a software engineer or what a software developer does. But that is an umbrella term for it. There are a lot of things which you need to take care of, right from solutioning to implementation and then maintenance, all this teamwork, and everything comes under what a software engineer does. But at its crux, you are a problem solver, and that you have to do using technology and computer science. That's it.
Yeah, indeed, we need a lot of problem solvers in today's time. Yeah. So moving on, we have a question. What skills are required to be a SDE?
So SDE is basically a software development engineer, and so there are various levels of SDEs. So it also depends from company to company. So for example, in Flipkart, Amazon, Google, we have levels like SD1, SD2, SD3, SD4, and then you go to architect and engineering, right? So all the expectations and the skills at these levels varies. At SD1, you are starting. So you are not expected to have a lot of domain knowledge. So for example, let's say you're joining as a SD1 for Android team. You are not supposed to be an expert in Android. You should of course know about Android things a little bit, but you are not supposed to be an expert in it. But as I said, it's problem solving. So the way you problem solve is the only way you can solve problems if you have the fundamentals of your computer science right. So you should know what algorithms are, what algorithms fit in what particular scenario, and how you can actually break down into tasks and execute it in a performant and efficient way, right? So this is a particular thing which we look at SD1 right now: your problem solving skills, your algorithms, your data structures, your time complexity and space complexity things. And then comes the domain round, where if you are joining as an Android engineer, you should know a little bit about Android. You should have at least some experience. When we moved SD2, the domain level expectations starts to increase. Like, you should be really an expert in Android developer. You should know everything in and out. And the expectations keeps on growing in SD3 and 4. So these are the things. Other than that, your experience counts. So if you have an internships experience where you have done a similar kind of thing, that's definitely a plus point. That's about it. Like, that's your fundamentals in computer science is the most important thing at any level.
Okay, so as you told that internships are really important, so we have the next question regarding that only. So you did a couple of internships, one as a project intern at Persistent Systems, where you worked with fuzzy logic, and then as a Python tech assistant, where you worked on NLP. So can you tell us a little about the projects you worked on?
Yeah, so these were my college days projects. So at Persistent, the idea was to automate the process of loan approval systems, which is even at this day and age is more or less a manual process, where you go and submit your documents, and then someone from the bank will come verify those manually and then come to your house, do all those backtrack checking, right? So the idea was to automate all these things using artificial intelligence. So what we did is, so the idea was, once you submitted your documents and all the information, based on the historical records, we developed an algorithm which will tell you upfront that whether this loan can be processed ahead for manual verification or not. So based on the historical data that we have so for example, let's say there are hundreds of whatever number of users have already applied, and we know that for these values the loans is applied, and for these values the loan is rejected. So based on that, we developed a model, and the model training that we decided on based on our research and all these things we did was fuzzy logic, because of the data, the type of data, and there are other factors included in that. So we went ahead with fuzzy logic implementation of the model training, and then we developed a model. And later on, because we had some time left, we also added social media analysis into it. So for example, we developed a crawler which will look into your Twitter feeds. At that time, because of the time, we only added Twitter feeds to get to know about your social status, like the kind of businesses you do and all these things, and then add that also into our model, and then spit out whether this loan should be processed for the manual checking or not. Just to save some time and to speed up the process. The other thing that I did as a Python technical assistant was I worked for a company where they were doing a lot of manual things, especially in the software, especially in the teaching areas, and they needed somewhere to automate a few of those things. And the best tool for automating any manual thing still is Python. And I did a lot of Python programming in college. So I applied for that job, and fortunately I got it. So I got to automate a lot of stuff that they used to do. So for example, one of the things that they did is they used to enter the students' marks and everything manually in an Excel sheet, and then someone would look into it and then prepare a report out of it using the Excel tools and all. So we automated the entire thing, where as soon as we gave a very nice UI where user can just enter into it, and it added all those things into an Excel sheet, created all the graphs and charts and everything within seconds. So that was one of the fun things that we did. And there are other automation stuffs also. So these are the two things that we did in 4th year and 3rd year of my engineering.
Okay, that's great. So the next question is then to VU Clip, where you worked on the Android app. Did you always know you enjoyed working on the app development side?
I liked programming a lot. From my first year only, I think, when we introduced the idea of programming, I enjoyed it a lot. I liked programming a lot. And apps so before I knew apps, I used to develop all these console applications where you can put some numbers and do some stupid things. But when when I got to know about Android app development, so that is one of the moment where I can feel that the ideas that I have and the things that I can do using coding, the apps will gives it a more tangible form. So for example, if you do something in an app, you can show it to your family and friends, say, see, I did this. And that I enjoyed a lot. So that basically pushed me towards app development in my third year of engineering, I guess. And from there, I picked up Android development because I didn't have a Mac, so I could not go into iOS. So I started Android development. I started making small apps during that time, calculators and text editors and all that. What is your name? Hey, all those kind of things. But slowly, it kind of ignites my that thing for app development. And when I got a job in my last year, I was not hired as an Android developer, but luckily they gave me a choice whether I want to join the backend team or an Android team. And because I knew Android a little bit, I thought if I like accept that Android role, it will be easier for me. So at job also, fortunately, I got into Android development, and then that continues. So ViewClip, when I joined, it has just launched a video streaming application. It was named as View. It was just launched in Indonesia, and we were planning to launch in India and Middle East and other countries. So that's where I started as a professional Android developer, build a few small features in the app, and then finally got into major projects. And then that's became my thing. Yeah.
That's a beautiful journey to where you are now. Yeah. So what advice do you have for students who want to move into the Android app development field?
Mm-hmm. So my advice is the best way to learn, if you are really interested in mobile app development and you want to see yourself as an app developer, the best way to do that is to start making apps, because the best way to learn something is to actually do it. So luckily, Android is very community focused thing, where it was actually developed by Google and all, but Google open sourced it. And most of the things that we do in Android, they're all open source. By open source, I mean they're free for everyone to use. You don't have to pay anything to make apps. So all the things that you need, Google has provided them free of cost. And they're all, so everything you need to get started is there. You just have to look into like internet, just go to YouTube and search how to make an app, and you will find tons and tons of videos. So to get that push to get started, the things are there. You can start from there and then start making apps on your own. That is the best way to learn. As and when you like, you will be doing some basic stuff, and that's fine for the starting. Try to get your fundamentals strong, as I said before also. And then as you proceed ahead, you learn along the way. Obviously, you will get stuck into at some point of time, and that's fine. That's basically the beauty of this profession, is you will always get stuck. We have like 10 years or 15 years of experience people here, and they also get stuck. That's the nature of it. You will get stuck. At that point of time, just look around. You will find a lot of help about this particular technology. Stack Overflow, LinkedIn, Google has its own tutorial stuff. So how to do things in Android. Whenever you get stuck, just search how to do this and you will find your answer. And that's how you build up your Android knowledge base and your experience, right? So that's the best way. So start building stuff. Try to find out how to get started. It's all there in the internet, as I said. Once you have that basic fundamental skills, so once you know that, okay, this is how I install Android Studio and this is how I make the Hello World app, and then you start building up from there. Like once you show Hello World and then try to show some more text into this, then try to take user input, try to process them. That's how you build up things. And then you go into the more advanced stuffs of like internet and all these things, beautiful things that we can do in Android. So the best way right now is to get started. Like start building apps. It doesn't matter if you don't know anything, just start doing it. You get stuck, you look in the internet, you solve it, and then move ahead. And that's the best way, because that is the way that's going to. So if like in college, right? Professors teaches us something and then we go out of the class and we forgot about it, right? And that is the nature of the human brain, actually. The things you figure out yourself, that is the thing that is going to stuck with you. And that's how everyone actually does it. All the great people that we have here, they do it in this way only, right? They get started and then they get stuck, they solve the problem, and then, so that's how you do it. Just like start building apps. That's my advice for you.
That's great advice. I'm sure it will help all of the mentees here with us. Yeah. So what kind of internships should students in colleges try to apply for if they're interested in these fields of writing? How and when can they approach these organizations for internship?
So that varies from company to company. So each company has a window where they hire the interns. First and foremost, so I know when we are students, right, we try to do anything that is offered to us, which is fine. I mean, there is no harm in that. But let's say you have a career path in your mind that you want to become a software developer, you want to become an Android developer. You should try to find an internship around that, right? So for example, let's say you have your dream companies, right? For example, whatever your dream companies are, Google, Amazon, whatever. All these companies have their career pages, and these career pages have, I think, have internship sections also where they hire interns for this. So keep checking those. They regularly post there whenever they have an opening, they post there. And the other best way is LinkedIn. They post a lot of internship things in LinkedIn also. So you should keep checking that, as and when you find something which suits you, you should apply for that. The other way is you can make connections. Like for example, if let's say you want to take an internship at Flipkart, so you try to find the Flipkart employees at LinkedIn, you try to get connected with them, and you can also ask them for reference. The thing to keep in mind while doing internship is that you should try to do internships where you have to do you have exposure of actual development process, because that's when you know that how companies make professional softwares, how the software has a journey. It starts from the ideation phase to the point where it reaches the end user. There is a journey of that software, and that journey is important. If you have an experience working in that, it is going to help you tremendously when you actually start working as a full-time employee. And that experience matters a lot. That thing really shines in your resume and put you apart from others which do not have that. Other than that, you should have a very clear idea in your mind that this is what you want to do, and that's where your search should be focused at. There are a lot of, so I know for a fact that Flipkart hires interns every year. We do not hire we do not hire freshers directly for a full-time employee post. We always, as far as I know, we always hire them as interns, and then those interns are actually promoted to a full-time employees. So all the things that you need to know for a full-time employee, that you learn in interns only. So at internship level, you have mentors who can help you every time. At full-time employee level, you have mentors, and of course your team members are there, but you are expected to solve things on your own. But at internship, you have that liberty that, okay, if you're stuck, someone will come to you and help them, kind of things. So yeah, so to have a idea that where you want to do your internships for, and what is the field that you want to choose for, and then just start looking at LinkedIn and that company's career page, and you will find something there. Yeah.
Okay. So what questions do recruiters, mainly ask when you're sitting for this role, app developer role?
That again varies from company to company, but I'll tell you what we do what most companies actually do. So there are majorly 2 rounds. The first round is your fundamentals, is your data structures, user algorithms. That is where most people actually struggles also. So that is the first round that you have to tackle. And the second round is your domain round. So where if you are applying for a specific, so for example, if you're applying for an Android developer role, the second round is going to be a round which is focused around that. Now the count of these 2 rounds varies. For example, in Flipkart, the data structure, there are 2 or 3 data structure rounds and 2 or 3 domain rounds also, depending on the position that you are having. For SD1, there are 2 data structures and 1 domain. For SD2, there will be 2 domain and other additional steps. So, but these are the 2 fundamental things that you should know. The first is your data structures and algorithms. You should be very, very strong in that. And the second is your domain. For beginners, for freshers, domain round is not that difficult because we know that you are just starting and you're not expert in that field. So we don't really judge very harshly on that, but your fundamentals should be very strong, because that is what you're going to use when you actually join the company and when you actually start working for us. So that's about it. So yeah.
Okay. So we all wanted to ask 5 pro tips you should know to build an Android app.
5 pro tips. Okay. So I don't know if you know this, but Android is built using Java, and now we have a new programming language called Kotlin. So if you want to make Android apps, you must know Java and Kotlin. So that is the first thing that you should know. The second thing is Android uses object-oriented programming very, very heavily. So Google have provided all these APIs, and you have to use those APIs, and you have to build features on top of those things. And it is all done via the object-oriented concepts of inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and all. So your object-oriented programming concepts are important. You should be very, very strong in that. Second thing is when you are making an app, you are making an app for a mobile phone, right? And a mobile phone is a different kind of device than a desktop, a laptop, or a cloud engineer. You don't have an unlimited amount of storage and memory, right? So you have to keep that constraints in mind. So when you are making an app, you have to make sure that you are not using a lot of your users' network, because if they find out, you are gone. The second thing is you should not use a lot of users' battery. So for example, if you're making an app which works in offline mode, or for example, you made a game, right, which works in offline mode, and user is playing it in an aeroplane, and he played it for 15-20 minutes, and it consumed 50% of its battery. That's a very, very bad experience, and Google actually penalizes you for that. If they find out that your app is doing this kind of things, your app won't show in Play Store, and you won't get that much of a user traction. So you have to keep these constraints in mind. This is actually very important when you join big companies. They judge you on that the app that you are making, is it under that constraints or not. Second thing is Android, like the next thing is Android is very, very vast. There is a lot of things that you can do, and it is not possible to know all of these things upfront, right? At that point of time, so if you get something which you have not worked before, at that point of time, you have to read a lot of documentation and code. So, and that I think students do not really put a lot of focus on when they are students, because they don't have to do that. You should learn to read and understand the documentation, because the documentation that Google or anyone's going to write, it's going to be very, very formal. It's going to be very like tech savvy kind of things. So you should understand that. So I would highly recommend everyone to read a lot of documentation, or read a lot of code actually, others code which you don't write, and try to make sense out of it, because that's what you are going to use there also. And the last thing is, as I said, make stuff. Like the best way to get better is to make apps. You cannot just watch others and expect that you become good at app development. You should start making stuff. They don't have to be revolutionary. You don't have to make a next Flipkart or next Google or next Amazon. It could be a very simple game. It could be so for example, I made an app for my father to maintain his monthly expenditures, which he used to do it manually in a diary, and he used to make a lot of mistakes, because manually you tend to do mistakes. So I created an app for that, which he still uses. It's been 2 years. He still uses that. So that's how you start, right? And that's how you keep it. So the last advice is that start making apps. Just start making stuff. That's a great feeling actually. Also, if you have an idea and you see that in your hand, that's an amazing feeling, and that's that you should expect that. Yeah.
Great. Very, very useful pro tips. I am sure these mentees are going to use it wisely. So with the pro tips also, what are the 2 to 4 mistakes that you shouldn't make while building an Android app?
The thing about constraints that I said, try to keep that in mind. Second thing is, if you are starting to make apps, right? People tend to set a very large goal that I'll make the next Google Maps. You shouldn't do that. You should not, like, what I've seen students do, right, is they will set up a very ambitious goal for them. They will start doing it, they will get stuck, they won't get any help, and then that becomes a demoralizing factor, and then they give up. So, like, build up from small grounds, right? Start small and then try to build up there. Don't set up a very ambitious project at the very start. And also, like, don't jump. Like, if you're doing something, try to understand it very well, try to implement it in a few different ways, and then move to the next stuff, right? It's better to be expert at few areas than like average in many things, right? So for example, let's say you are working at maps, so you can do a lot of stuff with Android Google Maps. And if you're doing it, try to like make a few apps using that APIs that Google has given. Just, it's not what people tend to do is they will quickly look into the documentation. They will implement a few like key things which Google mentions and then move into the next thing. Don't do that. Try to gain as much expertise on that particular field before you move on to the next. Other thing is, what else we can, yeah, I mean, enjoy the journey, not the destination. It's right. So like, enjoy the app making process. You will get stuck. That's the way it goes. You will get stuck. We get stuck every day. At that point, do not give up. Try to ask for help. If you know it feels weird to ask others. I know that everyone feels the same way, but that's not how you grow. If you stop asking questions, that is the moment when you stop growing. So if you are stuck anywhere, just like look for help. Post it on some online forums or post in Stack Overflow. One of the great things that software developers has, which others professions don't, is Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is a gold mine, and start using it. If you don't have a what you call account, you make that, start posting questions there, start answering people. Wikipedia. So I think software developers are very lucky in that field that we do have a lot of help around, but we still don't ask. Don't do that. If you get stuck, like, try to solve it. Do not just immediately give up. But if you are stuck for a long time, ask for help. Don't just leave it that, oh, I'll do it later, or just leave it. Don't do that. Ask for help. People are, sometimes they cannot be, but people generally, they're nice. They're going to help you with that. So yeah, those are the mistakes. Like, don't give up. Start from something basic and then start building up. Whatever you're doing, try to get as much information or expertise on that. Make stuff. Do not just read about, or do not just look into the video. So there are a lot of crash courses in YouTube and all these things, right? People watch it like they are binge watching Netflix. That is useless. That is wasting your time. If you are not doing that on your own, that is completely useless. So yeah, those are the things.
Okay. So what tools and softwares are you required to use a developer for Android app?
You only need one. Google has given, it's called Android Studio. Like, for example, if you are doing photo editing, there is Adobe Photoshop, right? Everything has a tool. Similarly, for developing Android apps, you only need one tool. It it contains all the things that you need. It contains an emulator. It contains all the Android SDK APIs that you need, and a code editor. Everything is there. It is just one single tool that you need to install, and that's it. When you can create a project. When you create a project, it comes up with a standard Hello World project, so that you can immediately run, and you have an app. You can run it in your local device also. That is the only thing that you need, and a laptop.
Okay. So,
and by the way, it is free. The tool is completely free. You don't have to pay anything.
Great. They'll be able to use it then.
Yeah.
So, any specific programming languages students should know before moving into the industry?
No, it doesn't matter what programming languages you use in your college life. If you're looking for a specific job, so for example, if you're looking for Android development job, then you must know Android. And to know Android, so the only language where you can code is Java. So it is naturally you need Java to learn Android apps. But if you're looking, so if you're a student and if you're looking for general job after your final year, the language doesn't matter. As I try to choose an object-oriented language, it could be C++, Java, Python, Go, JavaScript, whatever it is. Just try to go for an object-oriented language. Other than that, there is absolutely no. We don't care what during interviews also. Sometimes in Android interviews also, people say that we'll make in React Native. We say it's fine as long as the app runs. The language does not matter. But if you're looking for a domain-specific run, so for example, if you're looking for a specific role, Android developer, or if you're looking for a web developer job, if you're looking for a web developer, you should know JavaScript. That is an expectation. But for general SDE roles in any company, the language does not matter.
Okay. So you have a profile of GitHub at Stack Overflow. Are these asked by the industry? And is it important for students to build on these profiles? Any other platform?
Stack Overflow, not so much. But GitHub definitely does. GitHub, your GitHub profile is basically like your resume as a software developer. So it shows what kind of projects you have done, what if you contribute to open source projects. So it is basically your entire thing that I can look into your GitHub profile and I can tell you what kind of developers you are. So I will highly recommend it to learn GitHub. First of all, it is fairly simple, but for students, it can be a little bit, it can have a little bit of a learning curve, but it's worth the efforts. It won't take more than 1 or 2 days if you want to learn. And try to put things in GitHub. Like if you have created anything, right? For example, in college, we do a lot of practicals we have, and I don't know about others, but at Pune University, we have quite an interesting practicals that we have. If you have nothing else, put those practical codes, running practical codes into GitHub. That also matters. That also shows that, at least you have you know how to code. At least I know that, right? If it's better than nothing. And of course, if you are contributor to others open source projects, there is nothing better than that. Your profile really shines if in the GitHub it shows that you are an open source contributor. There is nothing better than that. Other profiles, Stack Overflow, as I said, does not really matter. You can put, it's fine. But let's say you are a competitive programmer and you take part in this competitive contest, which I highly recommend you should. If you're not, if you're taking part, so there are a lot of platforms for that: LeetCode, Codeforces, CodeChef, SPOG. So if you take part in these and you have a profile there, try to put that also. That is also that also helps. But GitHub, you should start using GitHub. If you're not, do it right away after the talk. It is important, guys. I cannot emphasize more on this.
Okay. So any apps or websites or maybe courses and certification you would recommend students get started with learning in this field?
Certifications, I don't think there are, there are few certifications Udacity gives, I think, but it's fine if you don't, nobody looks for those certifications. But if you want to learn, there are quite a lot of online forums where you can do. The best one is, so what Google does is, Google really wants people to develop Android apps. So what they do is they develop these tutorial series where they will learn, they teaches students and everyone from scratch, and they have partnership with Udacity for that, and I think Udemy also. So they have a lot of courses on Udacity and Udemy on Android app development, and it varies from a beginner level to a mid level to advanced level. So you should look for those. Udacity has, and all those courses, by the way, are free. You don't have to pay anything. The other thing Google has is they call it Code Labs, where what they do is they teach one specific thing from ground. It is a text-based thing where they will give you step by step everything what you should do, and you just have to follow those steps. It is mainly to get you familiar with the topic, and then you can start using it on your own. So that is also one of the great things that Android development thing has, Code Labs. Udacity, I mentioned. YouTube has a lot of good videos on that. A lot of good Google developers, they have their own blogs in either Medium or their own personal blogs, which are worth following. For example, the people who work on the Android Toolkit team, who basically gives all those Android APIs, I think all of them has their own blog posts, and whatever new things that they do, they share it there. So we all follow them for that. That is one of a very good source to learn. And there are some Android focused forums. Like, for example, there is something called as Mindox, which they did push a lot of Android tutorials there. And they do it fairly regularly and on the fairly, so Android is something which changes very rapidly. So the thing which we used to use in 2 years later, they are all now deprecated. So it changes very fast, and it is important for you to keep updated. So these forums helps you with that. Just Google search, for example, if you want to do something, just Google search how to do this in Android, how to integrate Google Maps in your Android app, or how to integrate a video player in your Android app, how to make a game in Android, something. And you will get a fairly good amount of resource in the first 10 slides. All the first 10 Google searches are more or less going to be very good. You can follow them. Yeah.
Okay. So we're done with the questions, and now we move on to the mentees. Mentees, you can ask all your questions. I have already 8 questions here, so I'll begin with it. Okay. So someone's asking, will be going from basics. This is at the very starting of the session. If you get the question, will be going from basics ? That's the question.
Sorry, I didn't get you. What was the exact question?
Yeah, I don't think it's a complete question. Okay, we'll move to the, okay. We'll be going from basics for app development. Basics for app development.
So you want resources for the, to get started? Is that the question?
Yeah, probably, yes. Okay, we'll give Ajinkya a little time to ask the question again. We'll move to the next question. Sure. So Priyam is asking, sir, how you got into Flipkart, interview and all?
I applied last year at, I think, May or something. I was looking for a switch. At my previous company, I was there for 3 years, and I was looking for a fresh thing to do. I saw a LinkedIn ad of a Flipkart job, and it was for the main Flipkart application, which was interesting. So I thought, let's give it a shot. I applied. Fortunately, they called. There were 5 rounds. Fortunately, I cleared all of them, and that's how you got it.
Okay. Next, Shivesh is asking which programming languages you have mastered at the time of placements.
I have not mastered any. It's not really, you cannot really master. So I was at college, I was really good at Java and Python. These are the two programming languages that I mainly used. C++ I used a little bit, but there are a few things which are very difficult to do in C++ and which was fairly easy in Java and Python. So that's why I chose Java and Python. But yeah, so these are the two languages which I use. Python because I did an internship and where there I have to learn. Java I learned from myself because of this Android thing that I used to do, and also other course things required Java. So if there is one language that I mastered, it would be Java and a fairly good knowledge of Python.
Okay. Next, Shreya is asking, please suggest some platforms where we can do internships in initial days of BTech CSE.
I think you can do internship only after second year, if I'm not wrong, in your third year or fourth year, but it depends from college to college. As I mentioned, if you're looking for internships, as I mentioned, the best way is to go into the career pages of the companies that you're interested in. For example, if you're interested in doing an internship at Flipkart, there is a career page at Flipkart. I think it's career.flipkart.com or something like that. Look for that and try to find if they have an internship role open, and then apply for it. And that's the best way. You have to do a bit of research. This is where you have to like, if you want an internship, you have to do a lot of research. You have to do a lot of searching for that. The other thing is to make connections in LinkedIn. So that again goes the same way. So for example, if you're interested in some of the in doing an internship in a company, try to get in touch with the employees of that company. Try to send them connection request. If they accept, ask them if they can refer you first do your research, first make sure that that company has an opening. And then you can request the individual that, hey sir, can you please refer me? This is the post. Give the entire information so that person does not have to do a lot of searching for you. Give the URL and everything, which the user can click. It can find, okay, this is the opening that is present. And then if he's interested, he can refer you for that. Also, if you want to like attract the recruiters, you should have that kind of a profile. So keep your LinkedIn profile as updated as you can. So if you are doing something, if you have done something interesting, if you're like in your college, try to post it about it, try to write a blog about it, update in GitHub. So if you won't believe, actually not recruiters, but engineers, we try to look into others' GitHub profiles also. And if you find that this guy has done some good job, we actually refer them on our own. So GitHub, try to put that in GitHub. And those are the ways like you can get an internship. It's not that hard. And then of course, prepare for it.
Okay. So the next question is, at what age, sir, started earning through app development?
I started earning after my college. At third year, the internship paid. The persistent internship didn't pay anything. But the third year internship that I did, I got paid for that. I remember $25,000. I bought an iPad.
That's great. Okay. So Priyam is asking, sir, as an Android developer, is it necessary to be pro at both UI and UX as well as backend code for app?
No. If you are strictly an Android developer, you don't have to know. You don't have to be an expert in backend. What you're talking about is called as a full stack developer. A full stack developer is someone who does both backend and front end. But if you're a mobile developer, you will largely be focused on the front end side of it, like making the UI for it and the Android side of things, like maintaining the database, keeping the app performant. If there are any crashes or issues or bugs, you solving those, but you don't have to go into the backend. It helps if you know the backend architecture of your company or your current app, because then it will help you solve problems in a better way, in an efficient way, but you don't have to be an expert in it.
Okay. moving on, guys, please make sure you ask your questions in the question and answer box, okay? So yeah, now Samriddhi is asking how you start your journey for app development.
Um, as I said, I was very interested in programming. I loved programming from the first year of my college itself. I used to do in my first year. It was on 2012. Android was not that big of a thing, so I used to do a lot of console-based programming, where that ugly black terminal that you get, you input using your keyboard, and then the program output something. I loved that, but it was it was not that like good, right? It's an ugly black terminal. That how much of a user experience you can give there. But when I learned about Android, it opened up a whole lot of horizon for me. There are a lot of other ways to get input. There is a lot of things to do. I can show images. I can draw on the screen. I made a Paint app. I remember it was a copy of Microsoft Paint that we have, where you can draw stuff. So all these things were not possible doing in console. So that's what attracted me. And then there were, luckily, as I said, Pune University has a very good curriculum. They had one or two practicals in Android. And I jumped into that. I asked my professor that, hey, sir, I will do this. So there was a calculator app, and there were some other things. I did that. And as I as I kept learning for those, it started opening things for me. And then finally, when they asked me, that's how I spent my entire college journey, making these small apps, which does very small things. But finally, but that was enough for a fresher to get into an Android developer job. Finally, when they asked me, I chose Android. And then at that company, the learning actually took speed. And that's how, like, from that point to here, it's been like that. To most of the things you learn as you go. Like, don't worry about, like, if you joined if for example, if you get a job tomorrow as an Android developer and you don't know anything about it, don't worry, you will learn on the way. So just go with the flow.
Yeah. So now Ajinkya is asking, can an electronic engineer go for app development?
Surely, definitely. Even a mechanical engineer can go for it, or a civil engineer can go for an app. It doesn't matter. Or even if you do not have a degree, if you're an art student or a commerce student, you can go for an app development. It depends on you. If you are passionate enough, if you have time, if you have enough time for this, because this is going to take time. It's not going to be a fairy tale, right? So if you are passionate enough, if you really want to do this, the possibilities are endless. Everything is there for you in the internet. You don't have to pay a dime. I have never paid anything for learning Android. It was all by me using the internet. The only thing that I paid is my Wi-Fi provider. So everything is there for you. You just have to grab it. It doesn't matter your background is whatever. If you're interested, just get a laptop, download Android Studio, and get started. And by the way, Android mobile development is one of the fields right now which has a tremendous job opportunity. So every company has an app, right? The app, every company, if the company does not have an app, it is not going to survive. Because the number of users you can get into using a mobile app is huge. So every company wants to have an app. And to make an app, you need Android or mobile developers. So the job opportunities are endless. And it's going to be like that, hopefully, for the future. So it is, if you are looking for something, I would advise you to go for it. It's looking good. The job market is looking good for mobile developers as of now.
Okay. So the next question is again related to this job opportunity only. Naman is asking, if someone is really good at development and programming but is not getting a job due to COVID, how are software companies tackling this issue? If you have any idea about it.
So I don't really know how the recruiters are like going for it, but I can tell you this, I have not seen a decrease in the number of interviews that I'm taking because of COVID. Actually, I have increased. The number of interviews that I'm taking has actually increased. So I think for IT companies, I don't think the job thing has slowed down. I think there has been an unfortunate layoffs, which is sad. But the recruitment, especially for the companies like Flipkart and others that I follow, even Google, Amazon, I don't see a slowdown in the recruitment. I think they are actively looking for people to join. Your profile should match. That's the only thing. And of course, there is a little bit of luck involved in this. The recruiter should show your profile, and it should hit them that, oh, this is the good. So those things apart, those things, I think, don't think the job market has slowed down. Try to, if you are like searching for it, try to keep doing that. Try to contact the recruiters. Keep your profile updated, as I mentioned. It's good out there.
Okay. Next, Samriddhi is asking how you manage your college study and app development skill together, what kind of issue you face, and how you tackle them.
At college, I really didn't care about my marks. The focus that I had is I should be above distinction, because there was a rumor that you have to be above distinction to be to apply or to sit for placement, which was not true for my company actually. But the only thing that I focused at that time was I was above distinction, about 66%, which quite frankly is enough. 2 or 3 days of study is enough for that. So I didn't really care a lot about theoretical things at college. Most of my time I used to do programming because that is what I liked, and I knew that this is what's going to help me in my after college things. But that is not a good advice. What you can do is, if you're really interested in programming, try to manage your time. Try to have a goal like what I had, 66%. I had 66%. If it is 67 plus, I didn't care. If it is 80, I didn't care. I get 66. That is what I cared. So that have that, and then definitely keep some time apart for your programming. Because see, when you apply for job, nobody is going to ask you how much marks you got in maths 2 or whatever subjects that you have. They're going to ask you programming questions, right? And that will actually matter at the end. So make sure I'm not telling you to not study, get as much marks as you can, but make sure that this is also very, very important. This is so keep whatever time you can. I would say that if you're in college, you should start preparing from your second year. And you should, if you are a computer science student, you should actually at least code for 2 to 3 hours every day after your college. You manage your time accordingly, but you should actually do that. It is important. Try to solve problems in LeetCode. One of the things that I didn't do is this, and that's why I was not able to crack a lot of interviews which paid 15 plus package at our college, which were like Symantec and DE Shaws and all those big stuff, right? Because I was mainly focused on Android and stuff, and they were not interested in that. They wanted data structure skills. So if you try to spend some time on LeetCode and try to develop your data structure skills, and spend as much time as you can with your studies. Manage that in the way that you can.
Okay. So yeah, the question Ajankya asked, the first question we took, the question was the basic knowledge we should know for app development for beginners.
A basic knowledge thing that you know is Java and the programming skills. The programming concepts like if and fors and whiles and all. That is the basic thing. And then Android specific thing you have to study. So Google has these get started guides. You will need a little bit of get started you will need a little bit of help to at least know the anatomy of an Android app, right? What is an activity? You will hear terms which are very Android focused, like which won't make sense to you when you start doing it. Like for example, you will hear things like activity, and you will hear things like views and broadcast listener services like this, which does not make sense. So you will need a little bit of help in that, and which is there. Just find one of the Get Started guide, either the official Google Get Started guide, or in YouTube, anyone, or any blog post that you find, or if you know any app developers, you can ask them to give you a little bit of walkthrough. Once you have that starting knowledge, you can now start building on that on your own by reading on your own, but when you start, you should know Java or Kotlin. Kotlin is a new language which came in 2016, and in 2017 Google announced that that's going to be an official language of Android development, but Java is not going to go. So if you know Java well enough, you should continue doing that. Java you should know. Object-oriented programming concepts you should know, and like object-oriented also is kind of a big topic. You should not know all the things. Inheritance is something which Android uses very, very heavily. So if you are not familiar with inheritance, try to brush up inheritance. Try to brush up patterns, design patterns, especially you will hear all these things in Android terminology. So once you have these basic things, you are ready to get started, and then now you can like build on that.
Okay. Priyam is asking, sir, what is your advice for competitive coding platform? Is it necessary to be good at advanced algorithms, and how often any advanced algorithms are used in your work?
So see, it doesn't matter if it gets used. We do use logic building and everything in it, but the thing is, there are lakhs and lakhs of computer engineers graduates every year, right? And you want to hire the best. You do not want to hire like anyone. And the only matrix that we have in computer science right now, unfortunately or fortunately, is your computer fundamentals and your algorithms. So if you know your algorithms well, if you know your data structures well, it is a very good indication that you are going to be a good software engineer, because that basically indicates that you are good at logic building. You will be able to solve problems by looking into it, and that is a good indication that actually puts you forward, because then how will you differentiate, right? Everyone gets more or less same marks. Everyone has the same curriculum. You need some kind of a differentiation factor for that, and problem solving and logic building is something that is a very good matrix. So the big companies, they are looking for candidates who are good at it. Having said that, you don't really need to know very advanced stuff. Like there is a good amount of rumor that you should know segment trees and prefix trees and this and that. No, you don't need that. But your fundamental algorithms, like your depth first search, breadth first search, binary search, then your graphs, trees, these are the things which you should know, which a computer science graduate should know. And it is expected from them to if I ask them to solve a tree problem, it is unfair to ask very hard, hardcore competitive questions. But if I'm asking you basic tree traversal, you should know that. If you don't even do a basic tree traversal, then that is a very bad sign that you have not paid a lot of attention in your curriculum. So I would suggest that even if you're not going for very advanced stuff, at least have the fundamentals ready. the tree traversals, the graphs, TFS, BFS. These are and these are in your college curriculum. Actually, you don't have to go somewhere else and read this. These are in your curriculum. They are going to ask you in the college exams also. It's just that you need a little bit of practice that you don't have in a college curriculum. In college curriculum, mostly it is going to be a theoretical thing, but in interviews, it's going to be more practical. You will not be asked directly about that implemented DFS algorithm. You will be asked a question which needs DFS and which might not be clear that you need DFS. That's where you are judged on the basis of your understanding, that do you really understand DFS well enough that you can figure out that this is a DFS pattern. And that comes from practice. Nobody's born with that knowledge. That comes from practice. And you have time. If you start from your second year, you have 2 years of time. 2 years of time is well enough to get placed in a solid product-based companies.
Okay. So next question is, Samriddhi is asking, is it compulsory to learn all concepts of DS before starting app development, or we can start with little bit knowledge?
You can start with a little bit of knowledge. That's fine. You can do this side by side. Actually, you should do it side by side. For app development, you need, as I said, you need an object-oriented concepts. So I would say that you brush up a little bit on that, especially inheritance and all, and your programming skills, like the standard ifs and switch statements and for loops and this. On top of standard Android APIs that you will get in the tutorials and your get started guides. That's enough. That's enough. You don't actually need high-end data structure algorithms to get started in app development. You don't need that.
Okay. So Naman is asking, how is it that the product that I view on Flipkart show up on my Facebook and Instagram feed? Is it Flipkart using my stats to show up the exact product on my feed, or is it Instagram or Facebook's end? How much data tracking is going in the background?
What happens is there is no data tracking going on. Even if it is in Facebook and Instagram side. What we do is, I'll tell you how things work, right? It is a digital age, right? Earlier, what used to happen is, if I am a consumer and I need something, I used to go to a shopkeeper and then ask, hey, do you have this? And then I used to buy it. Now the thing is reversed. Now I am a consumer, I need something, but I don't have to go there anywhere. The shopkeepers or the producers need to know that they need information that this guy needs something, and that's how the digitalization has happened, right? You don't have to go outside. Everything is in your mobile phone. So I should know, the producer should know that the company, that there is a demand for this, or there is a guy who needs this kind of thing. This is where Facebook and Instagrams and all this comes into picture. So when you like a product, when you share something, at that time Facebook tracks that like or something, and then I don't actually know the internals of it. Nobody knows, but then Flipkart have their ads on Facebook saying that Flipkart says that, hey, Flipkart does not say that show this to this particular user. We don't know about users. Flipkart says to Facebook that, hey, I have this mobile phone that I want to sell. Can you show it to the users who might need it, right? We don't say that show this to person A or show this to person B. We just say that, hey, I have this thing to sell. Can you help me with the potential consumers? Facebook knows that you have liked this particular thing in past, right? So there Facebook makes a link. Facebook knows that, okay, Flipkart wants to sell this and this guy wants this. So Facebook makes that link, right? This is what I understand. This is nowhere documented. This is not how, like, Facebook does not announce this. This is I think how it happens. And that's how you get it. Nobody tracks anything. It's just those small things, likes and dislikes and these things which goes. It is not like Facebook is giving me your mobile number. It is actually not allowed. Facebook, and at Flipkart also we take data privacy issues very, very seriously. For example, whatever things we should, so when we develop apps, but we don't get users' phone numbers or that. This all things are encrypted. It is everything is encrypted very, very strongly here. So we just get account IDs or something, which does not make any sense. It's just an identification, something like that. So nothing happens that, but what Facebook does on their side, nobody knows.
Okay. So Sonika is asking, currently I'm in second year of BTech. I truly wanted to start my career as an Android app developer, but
Right.
the major thing is how to take a guide to start and study and implement it to a next level.
Great question. So first of all, get yourself familiar with the ecosystem, right? Forget about the apps that you have to make. That will come later. First of all, try to get yourself familiar with the ecosystem of Android app development, right? For that, as I mentioned before also, try to look for these get started guides, right? And what they are saying, try to implement those on your own. So that will get your hands dirty. That will try to like you will understand how things work. Like for example, if you are like designing, if you're, let's say you want to make an app, right? And when user click on the screen, you want your character to shoot his gun or jump, right? You want the temple run gun, right? When you swipe up, it jumps. So the first thing that you should know is how to capture that, how to know that user has swiped up, or how to know that user clicked on it, right? So this is what constitutes your fundamental knowledge of Android. Try to get familiar with those first, and these are not very hard. There is a way to do all these things. These are not like you don't have to come up with it. You have to know that how do I know that user has swiped, or how do I know that user has clicked, or how do I know that user has typed something in his keyboard? How do I get that text, and how do I use this, right? So this and there are many other things, like how to communicate to a different server, right? These are going to be more about how to display an image. So these are all the things that constitute the ecosystem, right? These are going to be your alphabets. Like for example, if you want to make a sentence in English, you should first know your alphabets. These are what your alphabets are. Now you can use these knowledge to make your apps. Like for example, if you know how to read an input from user, and how to respond to a button click, with these two information, you can make a calculator, right? Because that's what calculator does. User enters something and then click on plus minus whatever, and you show the result. This two information is enough to make calculator. So this is how you take up those building blocks, and these are like Lego pieces, right? You make those building blocks, and you make stuff from that. So that's how you should look into it. Try to understand the ecosystem first, and then build up from there. That's the way. That's the only way to do it. But you have to get your hands dirty from this. You have to make those fundamental things, and then you can build up.
Okay. So here's the second last question we have. Gagan is asking, Java or Kotlin, which is the best and easy language for Android development?
If you know Java, continue with it, because Java is not going to go. But if you don't know Java and you want to start with Kotlin, because Google has announced officially that Kotlin is going to be the official language of Android app development. If you don't know Java, and so now there is no point learning it, because you have to learn Kotlin anyway. So you do it in your Kotlin. As a student, when you actually enter into the organization, you will learn Kotlin. That's fine. Can you give me a second? Just
Yeah. So guys, did you like the webinar so far? Did you like it? Okay, we have it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so as I was saying, if you know Java, continue with it. Don't waste your time learning Kotlin if you're a student. If you don't know Java, go with Kotlin. By the way, the things Kotlin and Java are not very different. You can think of Kotlin as a syntactic sugar. It is Java only in its core, but they have done some things which was not good in Java, so it doesn't matter actually. But yeah, if you don't know Java, then go with Kotlin. If you know Java, continue with it.
Okay. Ajinkya is asking what is Kotlin?
Kotlin is a programming language, just like Java, Python. It is developed by a company called IntelliJ. A company called JetBrains. They are the company which makes IDEs. If you know what IDEs are, Android Studio is also made by JetBrains only. So JetBrains is a pretty giant in computer science field. So they have made this language called as Kotlin on top of Java. You can say at its backend, it's Java only. But they have added a lot of functionalities into it, and they have made a new language. In 2000, I think they released it in 2015 or 16, but at 2017, Google officially said that before that, and by the way, Java is something which is owned by Oracle, if you don't know. So Google actually has to pay something to Oracle, as I understand. Kotlin is free. It is, so Google also tried to get away from there. That could be, so in 2017, Google announced that Kotlin is now going to be the official language. So yeah.
Okay. Sonika is asking which of the following is more interesting and challenging, front end or back end? What do you say or prefer to a beginner in your aspect?
For a beginner, it doesn't matter. It depends on you. It depends on what you are interested in. So I'll tell you, in both of these things have their own challenges. At UI end or at app development end, you have to make sure that you have to make sure of the performance, and it should look good, visual things. It has its own challenges. And at backend, you have to make sure of the databases, you have to make sure of the authentication, security, and all those things. So whatever interests you, if you're interested in security and database things, you can go with, we can go with backend. If you're interested in UI UX, if you're interested in general app building and mobile phones, quite frankly, you should go with front end. There is, I don't think that there's something is more challenging than other. They're quite different thing, and they have their own set of challenges.
Okay. So here we come to the end of the webinar. We have done with all the questions, and I am really thankful to all of you, especially Bunty. Thank you so much to give us your time, and this was a very informative webinar. And we are really grateful for QFirst to provide us with great mentors like you. And to the most, I'm thankful for the attendees who've stayed here and attended the webinar. And we make sure we'll be bringing great webinars like these more for you. So yeah, I'll see you there. So take care. Good night. Thank you, Bunty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.